All right, boys and girls, so today we're going to be going over lesson 4, which is exponential growth and decay. It's just taking lessons 2 and 3 and almost doing like a mixed review. All right, so if we look at the do now, number 1, it says Crystal was given $3,000 when she turned 2 years old. So I'm going to stop and I'm just going to circle any numbers that I see that are important, like 3002. It says our parents invested at a 2% interest rate, compounded annually. So I'm seeing 2%, that's important, I'm going to circle, and then they're telling me that the interest rate is being compounded annually. And I know we've spoken about annually before. It means every year. It says that they didn't make any deposits or withdrawals. So these are usually keywords that we want to highlight in some way, but they're not important for this question because it's just telling me that no money went in, but no money came out either. So nothing was happening with that money that she deposited originally. Okay. Which expression can be used? So here's my question. Which expression can be used to determine how much money Crystal had when she turned 18? So 18 is a key number. I'm going to circle it. So as I look at these formulas down below, it's important that it's multiple choice. I want to use that to my advantage. So as I check, 3,000 right now is matching everywhere. I see parentheses with a 1. I see 0.02. And then it's really just the plus and the minus, and then 16 and 18. That's really the only difference that I'm seeing here. So now I have to kind of ask myself what's going on. Well, I know that anytime I see a number with a percent, it has to be a growth or decay question. So I should be thinking, which one of these formulas am I using right now to answer this question? So if Crystal was given that $3,000 and she was investing that money, I wanted to save that for the end because that's the key word that's telling me which formula to use. Because if I'm investing money, it means that I'm saving money. So if I'm saving money, I should be thinking something with addition, not anything with a subtraction instead. So right away, if I'm looking for a plus sign, it can't be 2 because it's a minus, and it can't be 4 because that's minus. So right away, it's got to be 1 or 3. So right now, both choices 1 and 3 are matching except those exponents at the top. So I want to know how much money she had when she turned 18. But I have to remember she only started earning the money from when she was 2 to 18. So how do I get from 2 to 18? That would be a total of 16 years. So I know the exponent is time. So that would be 16 years that went by, not all 18. So it's not going to be choice 3. So if I look underneath at these questions, it's just practice questions now. You've really learned everything you need to get these done on your own. I'm going to go through most of them with you and just leave a few for homework. So just try to follow along with me as best you can. If I'm going too fast, please pause the video. If you really want to challenge yourself, I would follow along with questions 1, 2, and 3. And then maybe after that, try a few by yourself. And then you can always re-watch those questions on the video after to see if you got them right or wrong. Okay. Samantha invested $700 in a savings account at a 1.75% annual interest rate. So I see the keyword invested. We just went over in the do now. That means to save money. I know that she's saving $700 at 1.75% annual interest rate. So again, we're seeing that word annual. That means every year. It says she made no deposits or withdrawals for 3 years. So we know that this really isn't important because it's just telling me that nothing is happening with her money. All right, so I'm going to ignore that. The interest rate was compounded annually. That's important. Compounded annually. Again, it means every year. And the question says we want to find to the nearest dollar the balance in the account after 3 years. So I have to decide, well, now that I see a percent, I know it's got to be growth or decay. Has to be one of those formulas. But since I'm investing money, it's going to be growth. I have to add. So I'm going to write y equals a times 1 plus r to the t. I'm going to write these 3 variables on the side because I know that's what I'm plugging in for, a, r, and t. And then I'm going to try to just set myself up here to go. I know A is the number I'm starting with. It's the beginning value. It's the beginning variable. So I'm starting with $700. That's how much she originally put in. R is my percent as a decimal. So I'm going to change 1.75% to make it out of 100%. Because I know when I divide, that will change it to a decimal for me, which is 0.0175. And then T is time. So I know that it's telling me that this is an annual interest rate. Again, it's compounded annually, so that means every year. So I don't want to know just for 1 year, I want to know for 3 years. So I know T is 3. Now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to plug into it so that way I can solve and get my answer. So we have y equals A times 1 plus r to the t, which is 3. When I take this and I plug it into my calculator, if you have the Calculator X app, just pause the video for a minute, type this in, and then when you come back, you should have gotten 737.396, ... But it says to the nearest dollar, so I know I have to stop at the 7 because when I'm talking about money, I don't want to include the change if it doesn't ask me to. So 5 or above, give it a shove. So I know 3 is not going to change that 7 at all. So it's going to stay $737. Okay, so that was example 1. Moving on to example 2. Whoop. All right, looking at number 2. Okay, it says the value of a car that was purchased at $28,500 depreciates at a rate of 15% per year. So I'm going to stop and just go over what's important here. I know that I'm buying the car at $28,500. I know that the car is depreciating, which is a huge keyword. I'll come back to that in a minute. And this is all happening at 15% per year. Okay. When I see the word depreciates, I know that that talks about losing money. I know you had gone over that in yesterday's lesson. So just as a reminder, it means that I'm losing. And then it says to find the value of the car. So find the value of the car after 4 years. Okay. Again, anytime I have a percent or I see that keyword depreciates, either one of these tell you that I should be thinking of growth or decay. But again, it's going to be decay because depreciates means to subtract. It means I'm losing money. I'm taking it away. So we have y equals A times 1 minus r to the t. On the side, I'm just going to write what I'm plugging in. So A is the number I start with. It was originally $28,500. R is my percent as a decimal. So I know every percent is out of 100. So when I divide, I get 0.15. And then time, it says this is happening per year. I want to know after 4 years. So T is 4. And then I plug in and go. So we have 28,500 times 1 minus 0.15 to the 4. And then again, I'm going to just type this whole thing into my Calculator X app. And I should have got as a final answer 14,877.178 ... Okay. I shouldn't have said that because it's actually not our final answer yet. I have to reread the question to see what it wants. So it's just asking me for the value of the car. It doesn't specifically say to the nearest dollar. It doesn't say to the nearest cent. Just for practice, I'm going to go to the nearest cent again because I know change only goes 2 places after the decimal. So that's what I'm going to do for this question here. So again, 5 or above, give it a shove. So that 7 will round to an 8. So it'll be $14,877 and not 17 cents, but 18 cents because it rounds up. Okay, awesome. Okay, number 3. It says the value in dollars, which is V of T, of a certain car after X years is represented by that equation. Okay, I'm going to stop and then again just go over what's important here. So I know that the value in dollars is V of T. So that's how much whatever this question is going to talk about, which is a car, that's how much the car would be worth. Again, it says after X years. I'm going to just highlight that because that's important. After X years. And it's being represented by that equation. So I'm going to highlight the equation since they're giving it to me. So I hope you guys are noticing that in the other questions so far, like 1 and 2, we had to create the function so we could plug in and solve. If you look at number 3, They're giving you the function. You don't have to create it. I'm looking at it. So I just have to figure out what the question is asking me and then take it from there. So they want to know to the nearest dollar, what's going to be the value of the car after 5 years? So I just want to see, well, here's my formula. So let me rewrite it. V of x equals 25,000 times 0.86 to the x. I want to know after 5 years what's happening here. And I know that x represents years. And x is the only variable I can plug in for. So instead of writing x years, I'm going to replace it with 5 years. All right, instead of writing x, I'm replacing it with the number 5. So again, I'm going to just take this whole thing, type it into my Calculator X app, and I should be getting originally 11,760.675 ... Question says to the nearest dollar, this is the nearest dollar. 5 or above, give it a shove. So this 6 is going to change the 0. It's going to become a 1. So it's going to be $11,761. Okay. All right, number 4. It says some banks charge a fee on a savings account that are left inactive for an extended period of time. So I just want to go over what's important here because it's kind of a lot. It says that a bank charges a fee. So we've gone over the word fee before. I know if they're charging a fee, it means that they're taking money away. Taking money away. Okay. I know that if I have a savings account, that means that it's an account that I'm putting money into. It means that my money will increase. I'm putting money into this account because I want my money to grow. And then it says that after I have an account that's left inactive. Okay, inactive, I want you to think of gym. When you're in gym, you're being active. You are active. You're running around. You're doing track. You're playing volleyball. You're doing something in gym. So if you're inactive, it means that you're not running around. You're not doing anything. So inactive, again, means that nothing is happening. So I'm just going to write that. Nothing happens. Okay, so as I reread the first sentence again, it's saying that some banks are going to charge you a fee, which means they're going to take money away from you if your account is inactive. If you're not doing anything with your savings account, then you're going to get charged a fee. Okay, the equation y equals, I'm going to highlight that since they're giving it to me, represents the value, which is y, of one account. So it's the value of one account that was left inactive for X years. So I know X is years. And then the question says determine the value of the account after 4 years. So what's the value after 4 years? And then I have to round to the nearest cent for my final answer. So since they give me the formula, I'm going to start by just rewriting it. Y equals 5,000 times 0.98 to the x. The only variable I can plug in for is x. If the question asks me after 4 years, I'm just going to look back. Well, if x is years, and it is, I'm good to go. Instead of writing x years, I'm going to write 4 years. So wherever I see x, I'm just going to replace it with the number 4. Who remembers what that means if I'm replacing a value? You got it? It means I'm substituting it in. I'm substituting. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and type this whole thing into my Calculator X app. And I should be getting 4,611.840 ... Okay, I have to reread the question. It says to the nearest cent. So I know cents is 2 numbers after the decimal. 0 tells the 4 he's just going to hang out. So it's going to be 4,611 and then 84 cents. Okay, so that would have been number 4. All right, moving on to number 5. sorry, just gonna get myself situated here. Okay, number 5, let me bring this down. It says the function v of t represents the value v of t in dollars of a comic book t years after purchase. So anytime they give me the formula or the function, I'm just gonna highlight that, it's important. They're telling me that the value is v of t, v for value, in dollars, and they're telling me that t is the years after purchase. The question says, what will be the value of the comic book after 8 years? Okay, this is so important, just like we've been pointing out this whole time. Anytime they give you the function, you probably want to rewrite it. Okay, the only variable I can plug in for is t, and I know that t represents the years after purchase. I want to know after 8 years what happened. So t is years, 8 is years, so I'm just going to replace t with the number 8. Because again, instead of finding t years, I want to know 8 years. Then I'm going to go ahead and type that into my Calculator X app. And I should be getting 1,544.9036 ... All right, but then again, I have to reread. It says, round your answer to the nearest cent. I know that cents, or change, right, is 2 places after the decimal. 5 or above, give it a shove, he's not going to move. So my final answer is going to be $1,544.90. Okay. Number 6 says the number of carbon atoms in a fossil is given by that function, where x represents the number of years since being discovered. So anytime they give me the function or the formula, I'm going to highlight it. And they're telling me what x represents. X represents the number of years since the fossil was discovered. The question says, what is the percent change each year? All right. This is really different from any question we've gone over so far. If you look at all the other questions, it's asking you to like plug in a number, like number 5, plug in a number, and then solve to get your answer. Here, it doesn't say after 10 years, after 5 minutes, you know, there's no number to plug in. It's asking you what's the percent change. So as soon as I see percent, whether it's 10%, 15%, or the word percent, this is a key word on its own. I'm going to highlight that. It tells me I should be thinking exponential growth or decay. This is so important. I hope you guys are sticking with me right now. I know that the percent goes inside the parentheses, because if I were to rewrite the formula, which is a times 1 with the r to the t, right now I'm not going to write 1 minus or 1 plus because I don't know that just yet, but I know this is the formula I should be thinking of. I know that the percent is really the r value, right? We take the percent that's in the question and we change it to a decimal, which is r. So I know these guys have a relationship. So I'm just going to write that the percent is really the rate. All right. I know that the r is inside the parentheses. So now I'm going to check, well, what number is inside the parentheses right now? It's 0.95. So it's either going to be 1 plus r or it's 1 minus r. I'm going to put some examples on the side here to show you how you can tell which one it's going to be. So let's say it was 1 plus r. I'm just going to make up an example here, like 0.5. So when I add, I get 1.5. Now I'm going to do a decay, a 1 minus. Let's say I do 1 minus, I don't know, 0.7. I get 0.3. All right. Do you see how this decimal is less than 1? It's not a whole, it's less than that. So if I have less than a whole, that would have been decay, like this minus sign here. If this was more than 1, like 1.5, 1.3, 1 point something, that would have been growth. So since it's less than 1, I know it has to be decay. So I'm going to put a minus inside here. And now I'm going to say, well, I have to find that value of R. I know that 1 minus R is going to be 0.95. And that's just from the question. So now I'm going to say to myself, well, 1 minus what value is going to be 0.95? Now, some of you might be able to come up with this right off the top of your head, and that's awesome. Definitely plug it back in to check, but pretty cool. Some of us like to do out the math, like me, like Miss Burke, like Mr. Freya, and again, we want to just physically, algebraically, I should say, solve for that answer. So I'm just going to draw some train tracks here, and I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides. So now I get negative R equals negative 0.05. I don't want negative R, I just want R. So I'm going to just carry that over here so I can finish off this question. I know that there's a coefficient in front, even though it's invisible. It's really an invisible 1 here, right? But it's really a negative 1. So I have to use the opposite, which is division, to get rid of it. So when I cancel that out, I get R is actually 0.05 as a positive number. But again, it says percent change. This is not a percent. This is a decimal. So how do I change a decimal to a percent? Well, I'm either going to divide by 100 or multiply by 100. So if I want to get smaller, like a decimal, we've been dividing. But now I want to go backwards. Now I have the decimal. I want to make it a percent again. So I'm going to multiply by 100 instead. And I'm going to get the whole number 5%. So what was the percent change? Well, I start at 1, and then I either go up by 1 or I subtract something from 1. Since I was less, how much less? 5% less. Okay. Number 7. Okay. It says for a recently released movie, the function y equals, that whole thing, it's going to model the revenue earned, which is y, in millions of dollars each week, which is x, for several weeks after its release. So I'm going to stop and say, well, here's my formula, here's my function, I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to keep reading. It's telling me that the revenue earned is y. And it's also telling me that the millions of dollars each week is x. All right. And then it says that this is going to go on for several weeks. Based on the equation, I want to know how much money in millions of dollars was earned after week 6. After week 6. All right, so anytime they give you the function, you want to rewrite it. And again, the only variable I can plug in for is x. And if I look back, I know that x represents the millions of dollars each week. X is weeks. I want to know after 6 weeks. So I'm just going to replace x with the number 6. I'm replacing x with 6. Then I'm going to take this whole thing and type it into my calculator x app. And then I get y equals 6.165 ... But again, the question says how much money in millions of dollars. I'm going to say it's either 6 million, 7 million, 10 million. I want to round to the nearest whole number, so it's going to round down. It's going to stay as 6, right? 5 or above, give it a shove. That's not the case here, so it's just $6 million. Okay? The biggest mistake, oh, sorry, did that go off the screen? The biggest mistake here is that you guys will solve and you'll see it's 6 and you're just going to write 6. It is so, so, so important that you reread that question. It says based on the equation, how much money in millions of dollars? So just make sure you're including that in your final answer, especially if you're getting all this work done. We just don't want you to lose any points. Okay. And then moving on, let's do 8 and 9. So if I look at number 8, It's actually really similar to number 6. Okay, so just keep that in mind. 6 and 8 are basically the same question. 6 was short answer, 8 is multiple choice. So as I read number 8, it says the equation B equals, there it is being used to calculate the amount of money in a savings account. So I'm going to highlight the formula like we have been. I know that this is going in a savings account. I know savings account means that I'm increasing my money because I'm accumulating more. Then the question says, what does the 1.05 represent? I'm just going to highlight that for a minute. The 1.05, what does that represent? So if you even want to just rewind and look at number 6, I know that inside parentheses is the rate. And since I'm saving money, I know this is a growth question because growth means I'm greater than 1 and decay means I'm less than 1. And if I look here, this is more than 1. So it has to be a growth question, which means anything that has decay has got to go. Eliminate those choices. That's why we like multiple choice. You got to build your confidence, get rid of something you know is wrong. So it's got to be 2 or 4. But now I got to ask myself, since I know it's growth, I know it's a 1 plus R equation, right? So I got to ask myself, 1 plus what number is going to be 1.05? Some of you might be able to see it right away, like I said before, and some of you might want to do the math. I always like to do the math, so I'm going to do that actually right now. So 1 plus what number is going to be 1.05? Well, if I draw my train tracks and subtract that 1 over, I get R equals just 0.05. But again, my choices are in percent, and this is just a decimal. So how do I make a decimal into a percent? Well, I want to get bigger, so I'm going to multiply by 100. And then I'm going to get that number 5. All right, so it has to be choice 4 for 5%. As soon as you get R as 0.05, I could have eliminated 2 immediately because this is a decimal and they forgot to change it to a percent. They kept it. And we know that's got to be wrong. So it was definitely not going to be 2. It had to be 4. Okay, number 9. It says the growth of a certain organism can be modeled by that formula C of T equals. And then they're telling you that C of T is the total number of cells after T hours. So I'm going to go back before we move on and just highlight what's important here. So they're giving me the formula, which is good. That function, I want to highlight it. And then they're also telling me that C of T is the total number of cells after T hours. So T is another variable. I'm going to circle that, and I know it's in hours. Question says determine the number of cells. Determine the number of cells after 1 day. All right. Always write the formula first. Build your confidence a little bit. They gave it to you. You're most likely going to use it, so you might as well rewrite it. Okay. I know that it's asking me the number of cells after 1 day. Well, the only variable I can plug in for is T. So I have to check back. T is in hours. It doesn't ask me after 1 hour. It says 1 day. So now I have to think, well, how many hours are in 1 day? You got it. 24. So I know I'm not going to be plugging in the number 1 for T. That's how they try to trick you. It's really going to be the number 24 that you're plugging in for T. So here we go. C of T equals 10 times 1.029 to the 24, because I'm replacing T with 24. T is in hours. 24 hours is 1 day. So when I type this whole thing into my Calculator X app, I should be getting that C of T equals 19.85, ... And then again, it says the number of cells. These word problems are so tricky because they're all different in their own way. And this is an example of that. So a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, okay, the number of cells, it's going to be 19 or 20 because we've been rounding this whole time. So a lot of you, I'm sure, want to say the answer is actually 20 cells, and you wouldn't be wrong if you were rounding. But I don't want to round here. It says, what's the number of cells after one day? I can't have 0.8 of a cell. I can have 1 cell, 2 cells, 3 cells. I can have whole numbers, but I can't have part of a cell. It's just like saying how many people. I can't have 1.2 people. I can either have a whole person, 2 people, 3 people. Are you with me? So it's actually going to just stay the number 19. So how many cells? 19 cells. All right. Please don't forget, I know there's no homework section in this lesson, so we're going to assign, here we go, let me grab a different color for this. So 10, 11, 10, 11, and then if I flip it on the back, where is it? Oh, I lost it. So we're going to do 10, 11, 12, and 13. Okay, all of these are going to be your homework. All right, so make sure you get these 4 questions done for homework and you upload the entire lesson onto Canvas. All right, have a great day, guys. You're doing great.